Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our bi-weekly free seminars. Today we're going to be talking about working with template components. Dave is going to show you how to set up and use template components to handle a variety of cross-section situations. So, just a bit about Softtree for those of you that are just learning about us. We're based in Vancouver, BC. We're a civil software company. We've been in business for 25 years. We have over 1,500 clients, and our philosophy is that we make our software easy to use. We focus on engineering. We provide speed and power to handle large problems like LiDAR, and we're innovative. And before we get going, I just want to make a brief announcement. RoadEng version 7 is going to be released very shortly, hopefully the week of June 8th. And we are also releasing Softtree Optimal, a new technology for optimizing the vertical alignment of a road. We've been working with UBC for more than 4 years on researching this technology, and we are really excited about it. There is lots more information about RoadEng version 7 and Softtree Optimal on our website, and I would encourage you to check it out. And with that, I will pass things off to Dave.
Good morning, everybody. This is David Mills from Softtree. We're ready to start our Friday every 2 weeks webinar. This week we're talking about templates, RoadEng templates. And as usual, there is a questions area. You can type your questions in there if you'd like me to answer them as we go. Feel free to do that. And this webinar is being recorded. I have the I've actually remembered to push the button this time, so that's really good. Right, so let's start by opening up the location module and taking a look at what cross-section templates are all about. I'm just going to open up an example and do a quick introduction to templates, and then we'll look at some details in a little while. Okay, here's a little road. I'm sure you've all seen this one before. Let's take a look at the cross-section template editor. I think the first thing I want to mention as kind of an introduction is that the template components and templates are the most sophisticated part of RoadEng. They can be tricky to set up, but Softtree is here to help. So if you have a tricky cross-section template and you want some help setting it up, we can do that for you. And I guess the most important thing is that once you've set up a library of templates that suit your needs, they're very easy to use. So let's start by looking at how you use the templates, and we'll get into the tricky parts as the webinar progresses. So a template is a collection of components. So this default template has 3 components in it, and these are for those of you who've been with RoadEng and used it for a long time, this is the old first created template for roadways. It's a 2-sided template, and it has a custom dialog box. Similarly, this is the ditch component that was created way back when, and the slopes component that goes with it. So that used to be the extent of our template control. Some years ago, we developed what we called a custom component, and that component always has an editor that looks kind of like this, where you've got a list of parameters, and you can modify each of those parameters by selecting it and then typing a value. And components can come in all different shapes and sizes. Let's take a look at a fairly typical thing you might want to do. First of all, I'm going to build this template starting with my old default template. So a fairly typical thing you might want to do is say, okay, well, this old roadway template doesn't suit me anymore. I want to use something more sophisticated. Let's see what Softtree has provided on the web. So I click on this eLibrary button, and I'm prompted with a dialog box to retrieve a series of components. I'll just select them all. Here's all the components that are on the web, and they are updated periodically, so you can when you download it, you might see a few changes. Roadway components. Okay, I'm going to take this roadway component. So here's what it looks like. It's a one-sided template. It's got pavement, 2 engineered layers underneath the pavement, a bunch of offsets and components and so on. Okay, so I'll copy that, right-click copy, go back to my default template, delete this, right-click delete, and then right-click paste as new left. Whoops, it's in the wrong place. The roadway needs to go at the top of the list, so I use Shift up to do that. Now let's replace the ditches. So I'll delete those first this time, and I'll go down here and say, well, what ditch would I like to use? Ditch 1 standard. I think this is the one I want. It's not behaving very well here because I got this sloping down to the left. So in our template editor, I can change the default ground. There we go. So what this ditch does, as you can see, I'm dragging up and down, click and drag with the left mouse. It forms a ditch whenever the bottom of the ditch is below ground, and then when it's above ground, there's no ditch. Okay, that suits me. I'll copy that and select paste as new left. Okay, now I got a ditch in there. And finally, let's replace this slopes component. So I'll delete that. Go down here and find my slopes components. Cut fill left, I think this is the one I want. Yep. Okay, so I'll copy that, paste it up here. And oops. I'm not quite sure how I did that. Let's try that again. Copy. Paste as new left. That's better. I still had the ditch on the clipboard there. Good. And as you can see, these look pretty silly together. The roadway is very narrow. The ditch is very deep. But let's modify it so it looks right. Now, the other thing you'll notice is that I'm still working with everything on the left-hand side. I haven't created the right-hand side. We'll do that when I'm finished setting up the parameters so I don't have to set them up twice. Just going to turn off these labels. Whoops. They are turned off. Why am I seeing labels? Oh, how odd. Oh, I know why. All surfaces. There we go. Good. Make it a little simpler to look at. Okay, so in general, our new custom component dialog box has a bunch of parameters in it, and you can go through here and change the various parameters. Pavement width, there you can see it. If I change the number here, it instantly updates the template. So let's go with 4 meters. Fine. Pavement thickness, we're working in meters here, so decimals are required. Pavement width, and there's a shoulder pavement width here too. Now that's set to 1.5. Let's take a look at that. Just zoom in a bit here so we can see it better. So you can see that the main pavement is thicker than the shoulder pavement, and there's your shoulder pavement width. Okay, well, I'm just going to modify that. This is a common strategy. I've got a component. Let's say I don't want to pave shoulder. It's perfectly reasonable to set the shoulder pavement width to 0. And there's lots of things you can do like that. Like if I didn't want pavement here at all, I could just set my pavement thickness to 0. And then the pavement disappears. Now let's go back to the shoulder. I think I want a wider shoulder, a gravel shoulder, so I'll shoulder gravel width. Here we are. Let's change that to 2 meters. There we go. And there's a lot of other components. Pardon me, a lot of other parameters that you can change. Done. Now, what about this ditch that looks like it's way too deep? I'll just go into my ditch component, double-click to open it. I could have right-clicked on it too. There's a properties menu. And let's see what we've got here. Ditch depth is set to 4. Probably it was created for somebody who was working in meters, in feet. Let's change that to 1 meter. And now there's no ditch showing here, which makes sense. Okay, what else? We've got bottom slope 0, fine. Inside slope 33, okay. And that'll do it. So there's my ditch. It's a little wider than I might have wanted, but okay. And finally, the slopes component. This component allows you to have basically two parameters. These little logical parameters are just so you can turn it off sometimes. Okay, so I'll make the final cut 200 and the final fill again 3:1. Now, if I'm in a cut slope, I get 1/2 to 1, and if I'm in fill, I get 33, 3:1. Great. So I've set up the components the way I want them. Now I'm going to make this into a double-sided template, easily done. Right-click on the component, copy it, left-click, paste as right. Actually, that was a right-click. Anyway, paste it as right. Now I've got the roadway. Do the same thing here. Copy, and again, paste this new right, and paste this new right. Okay, so whoops. Left, right, slope, ditch, oops. Forgot to copy. Okay, and as you can see, this will cause a problem on a steep side hill. Good, so I've changed my template. Now, how does the software build this template? That's kind of an interesting question. We'll apply it and see how it looks on our road. So I'm just going to say OK here and recalculate, and there it is. It's been applied. Now, what is actually happening here as this template is being formed? I'm going to just run through the process. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can kind of see what's going on. And you can do that by turning on Merged Surface. That's in the template options. Notice you can change your colors and stuff in here too, line types. And that's the final merged surface, this kind of salmon color here. But watch what happens as I select on each thing individually. So you can see it building. First thing that happens is it builds the rural paved, and then it builds the ditch and leaves this strange cut here. That cut up there, by the way, is just stripping. And then finally it builds the slopes items. So it happens in the order that you've defined your template. So you wouldn't want to put your slopes component before your roadway component because it has to attach to the outside of the ditch. And there's a lot of control here. I don't want to go into the details right now. If I break this component up into its pieces, you can see how the layers work too. So let's do that. Now this is normally something you wouldn't have to do, but I'm going to customize this component just so you can see all the pieces and how it actually builds the way you would construct a road. So I'll start by clicking on Subgrade left, and you can see that it's cut a hole down to subgrade. Then I click on subbase, and it's filled up to the top of subbase. So here, we got a hole in the ground. That's the first thing you'd have to do. You might want to, when you actually construct it, you're not going to do just the roadway and just the ditch. You'll do the subgrade for the whole thing. But for the sake of the software, it does them one component at a time. And so I've cut the subgrade, then I apply this material on top, and I've got some fill material. You can see when I hover there, it tells me how much fill I've got. Then it applies the next layer of fill, which is this thing here. And finally, it applies the pavement. It's kind of hard to tell because the pavement hashing was so dark. You can't see the merged surface getting put in there. Okay, so there's a concept of a merged surface. The idea is that each component or subcomponent, we call these things fragments, is applied, and here's a leg, is applied one at a time in the order that they appear, and the material is either cut or filled as necessary. So again, if I had applied the subbase before I'd done the cut, there would be no fill. It would just be a bunch of cut. So I have to cut first the subgrade and then apply the subbase. Okay, so those are the details of the component. And if you need to actually edit things like point codes and these fragments and legs, you need to customize the component. Generally, you won't have to do that from day to day. Okay, let's turn off the merge surface again and get on to some actual applications. Whoops. Okay, first application I'm going to show you is a ditch station. Just make sure I've covered all the things I wanted to mention here. Yeah, I think that everything else I need to cover is going to show up in the examples. Ditch by elevation. Okay, so I'll cancel out of here, or and I'm going to open up my example file. Right, so here's a fairly simple alignment. I think it's just straight ahead. Yeah, just you can see how it works here. We've got a roadway going along. There's a nice gully in here. I've already applied a bridge over the gully. And now what I'd like to do is put in a special ditch that will drain toward the gully. As you will notice right now, if we look at the profile, you can't see the ditch automatically, but you can turn it on. So let's take a look at the ditch. There's the cross section, and there's my ditch. And in the profile, you can actually see the cursor moving. So, you know, we know the ditch. If I hover over the section window here, we know the ditch is that deep, which is 1.4 meters below alignment. And you can see the cursor tracking it in the profile. But let's display it. So I'll turn on profile options here, go into template codes. What template code do I want to display? Well, that's a good question. Every time you hover over a point in the template window, in the section window which is showing the template, you can see the point codes. So that one's SB3 if I wanted to show the outside edge of shoulder. And the ditch bottom, there's two of them. The inside one is called DIL. Okay, so I'm going to display the ditch bottom here. Turn on template codes, add ditch inside, and I'm just going to do the left one because we're going to be working with that side. Give it a color and a line type. Okay, there it is. Now this template, this ditch is following the roadway. So just for instance, if I were to put in a couple of alignment points here and lift the road up, the ditch tracks it. But of course, when it gets above ground, the ditch turns itself off. Okay, fairly nice. But I don't want the ditch to track the road. what I'd really like it to do is drain down towards this gully here, so that no matter what the road does, let's put that point back in actually, it's kind of interesting. No matter what the road does, I want it to drain towards the gully. Okay, here's how we do that. First thing I need to do is get an appropriate ditch component, and there's a bunch of them, so I'm going to change ditch left to be ditch by elevation. There it is. Doesn't look any different here, but if I drag it down, oh, there it is. How does this work? Well, it's got a ditch depth. There it is. Default depth is 2 meters. And it turns out it's also got a ditch elevation. And I think, no, you can't tie this one to a reference feature. Some you can. Anyway, so I can actually put in an elevation here, but I can't apply it to the whole template. That would be silly. I have to use overrides. And you can do overrides in here now. This is version 7. And right now you can see it's got no override at all. Okay, so I've changed the template, so it's using the new ditch. Let's apply that. And you can see it's still tracking the roadway. It's a little deeper than it was. Overrides are done in 2 places now. You used to only be able to do overrides here in assign parameters by range, and you had to find the variable of interest. There's a whole bunch of variables in here. These refer to all the components and templates that you're using. So ditch depth is 1, but I want ditch elevation, and it's hard to find. Oh, there it is. And I can do my assignment here. New in version 7, you can actually do this right in the template editor. You can go to the component of interest. There it is, ditch right. Ditch by elevation. Go into the properties and click on the overrides here, and you can see how it's been overridden. Now, what's the elevation I want? That's the first thing. I need to know where I'm at. Now, the elevation is not here, but I will be able to see it inside my profile window. So let's go back there. Okay. So that looks like a good elevation right about there. Okay, so that's 720. 724? Do I want to go up a little higher than that? Say 725. Okay. And then here, obviously I want the elevation to be higher. If it's going to drain, I'll make it 724. And you can do the same thing on the other side, of course. So let's apply those. Oops, wrong one. So at start, I want it to be 724. I forget where the other end was, so I'm going to just go all the way down to the end right now. Let's put 724 at the other end as well. I didn't look up my station, so I'm kind of stuck. So I'll make this 724 as well. Okay. And now I need to put in the location of the gully. So I'm just going to add it at any old station. I don't know what station. I'm going to guess at 250. Put in 720. Oh, 725 is low, is higher. Damn, I did it backwards. I want 725 there. So let's go back to these ones and just change those to 726. Good. Let's see what it looks like in the profile window. There we go. So the ditch actually disappears over here because it's too, whoops, because it's too high, and it goes along and it disappears right about there. Okay, fair enough. Now I've set this all up and done this before. Oh, and by the way, we actually wanted, oh, that wasn't the end that I, yeah. Okay, 950. Where did I put my middle? Should be around 650, right? So I can go into overrides here and say this one should be about 650. I didn't change the comment. That wasn't very smart. Station 650. Maybe I want to go down a little bit. Anyway, I'm going to open up the completed example rather than bore you with my repeated mistakes. But you can see there that's continuously sloping downwards from 726 down to 725. On the other side, it's doing the same thing. I'm just going to open that example that I have prepared, ditch drains to creek. Now, yeah, this turned out to have different elevations, so you can see the ditch is going downwards to the creek. That's great. And now I'm going to open the final result. Oops, missed. Where I've added in a culvert in the middle here. So I put in a culvert right there. You can see it in the plan window. There's my culvert. And the interesting thing about this culvert is that it's got some template properties as well. So let's look at that culvert. Properties of this culvert, there's a thing called template override. So if you put in a ditch, what this culvert will do is it will override the depth of the ditch and there, and also the width of the ditch, and then it'll taper to it in your plan. You can see it happening in the plan window. There's my taper. So that little dash green line there is actually the edge of subgrade. So it's this line here. Anyway, that's on the right-hand side. And if you take a look at the cross sections as we approach the ditch, you can see how that works. There's the default right-hand ditch. As we move along, it becomes a catch basin, and then it automatically shortens up again. So I've got a change in the template on the right-hand side, which is caused by the culvert. I don't have to override any components. The overrides here are all on the left-hand side, and so there's no need. It's a very easy way to override your templates. On the left-hand side, where the culvert is, I needed to change my ditch depth to get below the outlet of the culvert, and then I needed to change the depth over here so that it would drain down to the creek from the culvert. So the idea here is we've got a ditch on the right, which drains across using the culvert, and then the left ditch gets it out to the creek. Okay, that's the idea. The important points here are that you can override a template with your culvert, which maybe is a little unexpected, and you can override your templates by assigning parameters along the length of the road. We've chosen a ditch by elevation, but this works for anything, whether it's road width for turnouts or slope of your cut. Anything at all that is a template parameter can be overridden. Now, one more thing I want to show you. I'm going slower than I had expected, and there's a lot to cover, so I'm going to kind of rush through it. But the next thing I want to show you is a widening using a template component. So let me open up the example file there. Okay, so the idea here is that we've got a survey of an existing road where we want to go from 1 lane to 2 lanes. And so you can see here that the center line was surveyed, and there's no curve. It's just a bunch of short, straight segments. The surveyor's survey points were picked up. Over here near the intersection, these lines in the background here are the yellowish lines in the background are surveyor's lines, and you can kind of tell that there's already a turning lane in here, and it's quite wide on the left-hand side, the north side, but it narrows down here to be only 1 lane wide. So we want to put in widening. Now, let's just go through the process. So first thing I do is I create a widening template. The template we've got now is going to cut away the old road and rebuild it. That's not what I want to do. So let's open the next iteration of this. What we've got here is a widening template has been applied, and that widening template is there's one that's very similar but not quite the same in our templates table called Widening 5. The difference between that one and the one I'm using is that the one I'm using has an offset start, and paving width is actually from center line. So what we're doing is we're going out to 7 meters, and we're starting at 5 meters. Okay. And, oh, that doesn't look quite right. How can that's 7? Maybe. I'm confusing myself. That looks like 7 meters of pavement right there, starting at 5 meters. Anyway, nonetheless, I've got this widening template applied, but as you can see by the current cross-section, it's not tracking super elevation at all. It's going at -2%, whereas the road has got a crossfall down to the right because of a curve. You can see that we're in the curve here in the plan window. So this template is kind of useless right now. I'm going to fix that, and here's how I do it. I create a reference feature, and this is the important bit, so I'm going to do it while you're watching. There is a feature in here, and I think that's it right there, that the user surveyed, which represents the edge of pavement. It's called, very clearly, it's edge of pavement because it's called 112-47, which everyone knows is edge of pavement. Okay, so I'm going to make that into a reference feature. So I can do that right inside the template editor. So in my template widening, I have a thing called crossfall probe, CF probe. And currently it's set to 1, and the probe Y is set to -2, so that gives me a 2% crossfall, negative 2% crossfall. I want to tie this to a reference feature, but there aren't any. So I'll create a reference feature. You just click on this plus sign here, and it goes into the reference features dialog. This is also available from module setup. So the first one shall be a reference feature. I'm going to use my background surface, but I can get a reference feature from any terrain, any terrain at all. You can go and select a terrain. Usually they're in the background as well. Now I'm going to browse for the feature name, and it's a good thing I hovered over it because they're not named very nicely. 1112.47, there it is. So that's my reference feature, and it's pavement edge left. Now that defines the reference feature. I'd like to see it too. Let's take a look at the intersection of that reference feature. I'll give it a symbol, and I'll make it purple. So I'm going to see the intersection in my section window. I could also see the projection in profile, but I'm not going to bother. That's all I need right now. So now I have a reference feature. There it is. You can see it right away. I want to attach to that reference feature for my crossfall, both horizontally and vertically. So I got the horizontal, now I got the vertical. Good. Okay. Notice that the template is now tracking the existing surveyed crossfall, and I say okay to that, and there's my template applied the way I want it. So even though there's no super elevation variable, there's no curve here, I can get my template to track the road super elevation so that the existing road is right where it should be, and then we cut out a notch and build in our widening. Okay, that's kind of all I wanted to show you guys. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap it up for today? I want to say once again that it's possible to get Subgrade to help you with templates. But before you give us a call, you should probably check out our, let's just go to the home page of Subgrade here, and I'll show you how to get to training examples under support. And then in here, I'm going to go to the Civil tab. You might go to Forest Engineering. You'll get a lot of the same examples. But in the Civil tab, I find the best way to find things is just to use the Control-F function in your browser. It pops up a find menu at the top here, and I can just then look for all the references to template. So for example, this one, template components, explains to you how they work. And this is reminding me that there's one more really important thing I should tell you about. If you ever are unsure of whether a template is working properly, whether you've created it yourself or it's an untested component from Subgrade perhaps, you can always see what's going on by hatching the various layers. So I can see clearly that this is fill because you know, if it wasn't hatched, you know, who knows what's going on in there. But these you can right-click hatch, or you can right-click out here, hatch all. Oops. Hatch all fill. There we go. And the other thing that's really valuable is you can just hover, and it'll tell you what material you're filling and what the cross-sectionals are. So kind of nice for debugging your templates, because they can go wrong. I don't have a bad example to show you, but believe me, they can go wrong. Sometimes you'll see the hatches overlap, which means you're getting double counting. Or you'll see a piece of missing hatch, which means there's no volume being counted. Good. Well, thank you all for paying attention on a lovely Friday afternoon. At least it's lovely here. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with our next webinar. And this one was recorded, so it will be posted for future reference. Thanks again.